Hi everyone, this is my recording for ELP 532 on how to host a debate as a training activity. This activity is typically fairly interactive and is facilitated in person, and so it's a little challenging. It would be challenging for me to offer it exactly as intended on a discussion format. So instead, what I'm going to do is walk through how a debate would happen in a classroom and then give a modified version of a debate activity at the end. So I'm going to be going over an introduction, the benefits of hosting a debate, how you would facilitate a debate in the classroom, and then the target audience, objective outcomes, and then I will give the activity prompt at the end. So what is debate? So I think many people are already pretty familiar with the debate. We have a lot of exposure in terms of political debates, but we also have probably heard of debate teams or clubs like Model UN. But in general, a debate is a discussion on a discussion on a topic when opposing arguments are presented. It's usually done in a professional format, and there's normally two sides that are being presented, but there can be many, many more. And it's really a great training activity. It has lots of benefits, which I'm going to go over next. And one of my favorite parts about it is that it's super easy for instructors to set up. And I think it has a super high payoff in terms of benefits and learning, in terms of the work required to make it happen. So the benefits is it's really easy to prepare, as I mentioned. It's easy to facilitate during the actual activity. It's highly transferable to lots of different environments and different settings and different topics. It's really engaging for participants, and it allows them to consider multiple perspectives in a way that they might not otherwise. It also teaches lots of valuable skills like teamwork, collaboration, research, evaluation of evidence, critical thinking, communication skills like active listening, public speaking, persuasive speaking. It teaches openness to diverse perspectives, and it also teaches time management. So I'm going to quickly outline how you would facilitate a debate in a classroom. So there's 4 steps I'm going to go over. There's the pre-class preparation, the in-class preparation, hosting the debate itself, and then the reflection. So what you would be doing ahead of time is determining the prompt that you're going to want your students to debate. It's really important that this prompt be something that can be considered from both perspectives, and in a situation where it's really important to consider both perspectives. You also want to make sure that this prompt is culturally sensitive and won't be triggering or going over really harmful content. You also want to clarify your parameters ahead of time. This might be how long do you want the debate to last, how many teams or how many perspectives do you want to have represented, and at what time in the content, like what time in your course would this make sense. Maybe this would be a way for students to be introduced to the content, or maybe it could be a way that they could be tested on the content after they've learned on it. Another optional step in terms of pre-class prep is maybe you could pre-select the teams. This might be applicable if students have already been working on certain perspectives, or if you are wanting certain students to work together. The next step is in-class prep. So this is when you're actually with your students. So you're going to introduce the prompt, what they're going to be arguing over exactly. You're going to outline the parameters of the activity and the behavioral expectations. I think that this is especially important because debates can sometimes get heated. So what is the sort of language or actions that would be appropriate in this setting? You're going to divide the students into teams, either the predetermined teams that you established, or you could let them decide the teams themselves. You can either have them select which side they want to debate, but sometimes that might not always work out if the teams, they might end up being uneven if they're able to select their own team. So it can just be as simple as dividing the classroom in half and assigning a side to each one. And then you want to allow time for initial research. So the time allowed for research can vary quite a bit. So you could give them maybe 5 minutes to do research. Maybe you could give them no time if this is in the format of a test. Or maybe this is something that you're introducing weeks in advance, and then they're going to be using the culmination of their knowledge that they develop over the course. So they could have a significant amount of time to research. So you just want to determine that's part of your prep process as well, but just letting the students know how long they're going to have to prepare. The third is to host the debate. So these are just a couple of things that you want to consider that are important that will impact how the debate is delivered. So what do you want the room to be set up like? What is the delivery? For example, are you going to have the students stand while they're giving their debate? Would you like them to present in front of the room? Do they need to have a PowerPoint to go with them? Maybe they could just be sitting in the side of the classroom and it could be a lot more casual. And then consider also the number of speakers from each side. So does every single student need to share at some point, or is there just going to be one or two representatives from each side? Whatever format you pick, just make sure that you have a reason for selecting it the way that you did. For example, maybe you are in a pre-law class, and gaining that public speaking experience where you're standing up and speaking in front of the room is really important and relative for the training. But if not, maybe you could do a more informal setting. So just think about the format that makes the most sense for the content of the course itself. So this is an example of a structure of hosting a debate. You could make it significantly longer or you could make it significantly shorter. But typically you start with opening statements. This is after the research is done, so they each have 5 minutes to give their opening statements, and then they have an opportunity to prepare a rebuttal for the other team's opening statements. You have about 3 minutes to deliver the rebuttal. Optional is you could do secondary rebuttals or however many rebuttals you'd like. Then you always give teams an opportunity to prepare a final statement and then deliver their closing statements at the end. So like I said, this could be modified pretty significantly depending on the structure, also the number of teams that you might be having. And then at the end is the reflection. So I always say that reflection is where the learning happens. So this is a really critical part of the debate that you don't want to skip over. So these reflection questions might be overall, how did it go? How was their individual performance or their performance of the team? What were the strengths or weaknesses of their argument? What would they change next time? Did they do a good job preparing for the other team's rebuttal? How was their research? Did they have a lot of evidence to back up their arguments? And then how were their communication skills? Did they do a really good job of actively listening when the other team was debating, or were they just stuck in their head? Did they do a good job of clearly and succinctly making their point, or were they saying the same things over and over? So I like to facilitate this reflection both as a group and then also a written portion. So as you can see, this is there's 4 different steps, but they're all pretty clear, and it results in not a lot of work for the facilitator ahead of time, which is really nice. This is also super scalable. So I've done this in groups as small as 6 and as large as about 150 or so. Just some examples. I teach a service learning class, and one of the activities I have them do in small teams is debate the benefits of volunteerism, which is where you go overseas, spend 1 to 2 weeks doing a volunteer project. In an environmental class I took in college, we took an issue which happened to be the installation of a Nestle water plantation in the gorge, and so the class was divided into 3 teams, representatives from Nestle, from the town's residents, and from the Environmental Protectionism organization. And then we had about a week to prepare and really consider what would the people of the constituents of the group that we're representing, how would they feel in this situation? And then we facilitated the debate over a 2-hour class period. A final example is I took an international studies class, and it was a class of about 130, and we divided into 10 different teams in a United Nations-like format, I think similar to Model UN, where we were given a perspective. Maybe it was a religious group, maybe it was the government, maybe it was the working class, etc. And we had to debate an argument, and we actually did this over 2 weeks in order to allow for all sides to debate their arguments. So you can see it's super scalable, and it can be a really simple topic, or it can be a super nuanced and complex topic as well. So a couple of wrapping up things here to go over the target audience. So I really think that this is super applicable for many ages. I think anywhere from middle school through adult would be great. You could also probably do it with younger, as long as the topics were simpler and the structure was shorter in duration. I think it's really great for groups who have some level of familiarity with each other. I probably wouldn't do this activity as an icebreaker, for example, because I think being able to effectively communicate is a really essential skill for this, and you don't want the research portion of this activity to be focused on the teams just getting to know each other. I also think it's more appropriate for longer term classes or trainings. So if I was just doing a 50-minute training, I probably wouldn't use this activity unless that training happened to be on like public speaking skills or debate skills. But I think it's better for teams that work together longer. Maybe that could be a 4-hour training, or it could be, a college course that meets together for several weeks on end. The objectives are that participants will be able to identify 2 to 4 arguments defending their position by pulling from research and/or personal experience, while also considering counter arguments. Participants will also be able to clearly and succinctly and persuasively debate their arguments. I think those are 2 separate skills. Finding the research to begin with, and then can you clearly articulate them? Third is that they will be able to compose a rebuttal in response to the opposition's opening statements, and that they will be able to reflect on their performance and evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of their own argument. Some general outcomes is that it fosters collaboration and teamwork, encourages critical thinking, it allows students to analyze various perspectives, they develop their research skills, they practice effective communication, and I think super important is promoting active listening as well. So I think that just in summary, if you want an activity that's engaging and develops critical thinking and isn't a lot of work to put together, I think that debate is a really great opportunity. I always try and see if I can slip a debate into my courses at some point. I've found that students really enjoy them, and I learn a lot from them as well. So the activity that I have found, as I mentioned, this would be a little bit tricky to facilitate. So I'm going to do an activity, it would be difficult, to facilitate remotely, in particular on a discussion board. So the activity that I have come up with is to do a one-person debate. So what I'm going to have everyone do who chooses to do this activity is come up with 2 to 4 arguments both in favor of and against 2 of the following prompts below. This will allow everyone who participates to consider both sides of these arguments. So I've selected 3 prompts that I think are pretty relevant to higher education and that I hear people discussing on a regular basis. So those are, should college classrooms have options for both remote and in-class learning? And so what I mean by this is, there are some students sitting in the classroom and there are some students maybe sitting on Zoom at the front of the room. Sometimes it's viewed as a hybrid classroom, but I know that hybrid classrooms can have multiple definitions as well. So that's the first prompt. The second prompt is if colleges should continue to offer tenure to faculty. And the last, I think becoming increasingly relevant, is should AI, artificial intelligence, be integrated into higher education classrooms? So again, you pick 2 of those prompts and then you pick 2 to 4 arguments both in favor and against of each prompt. And I know that I'm super opinionated on all 3 of these arguments, so I will be very curious to see what everyone else comes up with. Thanks for hanging out with me until the end, and I will see you on the boards. Bye, y'all.